Shalom, shalom, everyone. I'm sitting here with one of my teachers, Crown Prince Zurishaddai Yehudah, and I'm sitting down here with him today in order to get his part of the history of his segment of the nation of Israel. So, welcome, Nasik. How are you?
Well, I'm doing well. Thank God. Baruch Hashem, as I say.
Hallelujah. So, where I want to start out with you is I want to ask you, what were your beginnings like? Where were you born? Your parents' names, your upbringing, where did you start out? That sort of stuff.
Okay, well, I was born in Thompson, Georgia, a little place called Cherokee Town, Thompson, Georgia, in 1952, February 17th. And my parents, my mother was Luella, and my father name is Sip. And that's his real name. Because every time I say Sip, people say, well, that's his whole name? Yes, that was his whole name. Or the birth certificate and stuff. So.
Okay. So, so you were born in Georgia. At what time did you end up in New York City? Did you come up to New York City?
Well, my mother, that marriage lasted a very short while, basically a few months. And my grandmother sent for my mother to come there because my grandmother was living in New York. So my mother came up to New York. I was about 15 months old when I came to New York.
Oh, so you basically a New Yorker.
Yeah, I don't know anything about the South except that's the spot of my birth. That's it.
You ever been back to Georgia?
A few times, but it's nothing I can relate to.
Okay, I get you. So, so growing up in New York City, how in the 50s and 60s, how was it for you in New York City?
Well, to be honest, about the 50s, and I mean, not being naive to a lot of stuff. You're very naive, and I grew up. My first school, I stayed with my grandmother for a while, and my mother got remarried. Then we wound up in Harlem. So the first school I actually started in, I started kindergarten in Harlem, first grade in Harlem, and not knowing the history of the area like that, and seeing everything around, and I couldn't relate to anything really black being positive. And which is ironic because you look at the other side, because after that, first grade, kindergarten and then first grade. Then when I started second grade, I was in Midtown Manhattan. There's more whites there in Midtown Manhattan. And I went to second grade and part of the third grade. I finished the third grade in Brooklyn. And so my idea of how whites live compared to how blacks live and what they had, what we didn't have, you didn't see anything really good about blacks that you want to be about. If anything, you see that, as a young boy coming up, the white folks had all this going for them, had that going for them, and you said, well, we didn't have this, we didn't have that, we didn't have television, so mostly it was a radio thing, so it was a little different. So you never really look for anything great.
So it was more how society was at that time.
Yeah.
White folks were more privileged than what black people would have been during that time, the 50s and 60s.
Well, I would say around my circle, I don't know about all the other blacks, but a lot of blacks I see around my circle were pretty much in the same situation I was coming up in, at that time. Poor. If you had two people in the household, the man worked, the woman, she was home or stay at home. When we first, I know when I first came to New York, my mother worked, and then when she got married again, she was more like a stay home wife. But and then those that happen to have parents, two parents out, it was very few. Most of them just had a single parent home, and it was just the mother, and nobody. Some people knew their father, some people didn't know their father, and some people carried their father's last name, some didn't.
So that was just the life.
It was a pretty. It seemed normal because it was a majority of the situation that existed around us amongst blacks.
Right.
Where with the whites, you had a complete family of a male and female in the household. They might have had 2 kids. They doing this. They got all these different things. Commodities that kids have going. Talking about allowance was something that none of the black styles around could identify with.
Right.
Talk about an allowance. That's something you see on TV. Right. or maybe you knew a few white folks that talk about how much allowance they get a week.
Okay. Yeah. So, Malcolm X, just veering off a little. Mm-hmm. Do you have any recollections of Malcolm X?
Well, definitely. At that time, when Malcolm X was starting to be kind of prominent, I really didn't want too much to do with that. Because if there's such thing as being the house Negro,
right?
that would have been me pretty much. You know what I mean? And I say that, you know what I mean? And I could laugh at it somewhat, but actually to see that they had to endure and go through certain things and certain changes at the time, he's bringing out issues that I could realize and agree with as a youth, with a very little understanding as I look back at it, but not mainstream, because I'm believing that if you go to school, you achieve this at the level of education, that level of education, that that would be the true liberation for you, is that the more educated you became. And as a youth, I had a lot. I was always top in my class coming up as a youth, and got scholarships and everything like that. So only thing I wasn't was the religious thing was not my view.
Right. You told me at one point you were an atheist. You didn't believe.
No. I didn't say I didn't say I was an atheist.
Right.
Basically, I was a non-religious.
Non-religious.
I mean, it's a subtle difference. In a sense that and instead of just saying there's no God, I just said, my concept of when people say God was Jesus, a white guy, and this and that and the other, I say, well, he ain't doing nothing for us, and they ain't working, so I didn't see too many white folks talking about Jesus hard,
right,
and doing things and making movements,
right,
and positive movements. So I wasn't an atheist, but I went to church twice in my entire life before I was acknowledging myself as Israelite. And those were on holidays, and the church like across the street, and it was just something to go to do something different. But I never ever read anything in the scriptures, and I was a pretty smart guy in class, but I never read not one page in the scriptures. When we recite the 23rd Psalm and Assembly, I didn't even know that was in the scriptures or whatever the case is. I just thought that's something you just say.
Right.
And they tell you it's Bible stuff, but you couldn't prove it by me because I never read it.
Right.
I didn't read about Adam and Eve in the scriptures and none of that kind of stuff. I was more into like the Charles Darwin thing.
Right.
And not knowing much about Darwin.
Right. So, my next question is, well, you told me something about your youth that you wanted to be a lawyer.
Well, basically, law, school teacher, politics. That's the only areas I was looking at, because I seen that was I thought that would be the prominent job to be able to really make a mark in society, right, and get above, the so-called drudgery as a black man was being, pretty much held down in those days. I figured I asked them, my guys, when they did talk about Negro History Week.
Wow.
And
wow.
then
now they got a month. That's February, the shortest month of the year.
Yes.